That night, the sky was filled with moonlight as bright as silver, casting upon everything a gentle hue, but also concealing a mysterious nuance. On the rooftop of an old building, the space seemed to be still, with only the soft sound of the wind blowing and the rustling of leaves echoing from below. The moss-covered wall had absorbed the traces of time, with ancient motifs still imprinted on every brick. At the highest point of the building, the silhouette of a woman was standing frozen, her knees as if about to give way, her trembling hand holding a mask shimmering with moonlight. Under the hazy light, the mask seemed to emit a faint radiance, both captivating and evoking a sense of unease. That girl was Luna. The expression of panic was imprinted on her pale face, her eyes wide open, clearly reflecting astonishment intermingled with fear. She lifted the mask, pointing it directly at the man standing silently in front of her. The sound of metal from a creaking iron door echoed from somewhere, as if inadvertently intensifying the existing tension. Luna bit her lip tightly, while the cold wind swept through, causing her long black hair to flutter. The atmosphere became dense, as if frozen in that moment. Ahead, Orion, the man with a pensive appearance, also did not take his eyes off Luna. He stood slightly off to the side at the other edge of the rooftop, his silhouette appearing to be tinged with darkness under the silver moonlight. His eyes shone with something both strange and familiar. In that moment, it seemed that only the two of them existed amid the old building, amid the windless air, amid the darkness imbued with a surreal beauty. Each wave of cold wind swirled through, making the atmosphere even more tense, and Luna seemed as if she had forgotten how to breathe. She noticed her heart pounding wildly, and everything suddenly became unstable.
"Who are you? Why can't I trust you anymore?" Luna's voice burst out, echoing with a tone of choked sorrow mixed with suffering.
The question burst forth, tearing apart the silence, causing it to echo on every ancient wall, then vanish into the darkness. At that moment, she did not fully understand what had led her to such extreme fear, but she knew there was a horrifying secret related to the man before her. The mask in her hand at that moment was not merely a decorative object. It shimmered, as if it concealed a deep secret waiting to be revealed. And Luna herself did not know whether she was ready to embrace that secret or not. Around them, everything became utterly silent. However, this silence was not a peaceful one. It was like a taut curtain before a fierce storm, stretched so tight it seemed on the verge of breaking. Luna looked up at the sky, observing the full moon shining brightly. Then she lowered her gaze towards Orion. His silhouette was reflected through the dim light, his lips pressed tightly, and the corners of his eyes bore a hint of indefinite sadness. That silent demeanor only deepened her suspicions. Luna's gaze lingered on Orion's hands, which were tightly clenched. She had never seen an Orion like that, somewhat distant, mysterious, even frightening. A sudden strong gust of wind rushed by, causing Luna's skirt to flutter, along with the sound of dry leaves rustling in the distance. At first glance, the scene could be deemed poetic. A moonlit night overhead, two individuals standing opposite each other, as if a romantic painting about love. But in truth, tension had enveloped the scene, erasing every bit of its inherent gentleness. In that brief moment, Luna herself was not sure whether her fear came from her suspicion of Orion or from the tumultuous emotions within her. She looked at the mask in her hand. Its surface was coated with a thin layer of metal, glistening under the moonlight. It had the shape of a half-face, with softly etched lines that were full of mystery. Luna did not know the reason that had driven her to bring this mask. She only remembered that, on a previous night, she had found it by chance in a dusty corner of a room. A feeling of unease and curiosity surged, compelling her to hold on to it. Now, as she faced Orion, the mask had become a testament to her doubts regarding his nature, regarding the story he had long concealed. For a while, silence reigned in the space. Luna waited for an explanation, a gesture, or at least some sign from Orion, but he only slightly furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with sadness, as if wanting to say something but ultimately not uttering a word. In the darkness, Orion's appearance became lonely, desolate, as if he had been driven into a corner by Luna's very question. Or is he hiding something that makes his heart heavy? The space around them, although filled with moonlight, still exuded the essence of pain and torment.
Luna herself gradually sank into a tangle of emotions. On one side, the intense love she felt for Orion, and on the other,
a vague fear as she suddenly realized that perhaps she did not know much about his ancestry, about the secret of this man. The sound of insects chirping from below echoed, forming a somber melody that evoked the impression of a soundtrack for an impending tragedy. Luna's heart pounded like a drum, heralding a major turning point in her life. She took a deep breath, attempting to regain her composure, yet even she was not sure what she feared more: facing the truth or losing the man before her. She felt as if her knees were about to give way again, yet she forced herself to stand firm, holding the mask tightly. She did not dare to let it go,
for it was the only thing that gave her the courage to continue questioning Orion, to keep seeking answers to the mysteries that shrouded everything.
The night wind carried along a thin layer of mist, flowing across the rooftop, causing Luna to shudder. She lowered her voice, trying to contain her emotions, yet her voice still trembled. "Say something," she exclaimed, as if trying to coax a response from Orion. However, Orion only stepped forward one step, his eyes meeting hers, the distance so close that she could feel his heavy breathing. At that moment, Luna caught a glimpse of suffering in Orion's eyes, as if he were trying to suppress a built-up sorrow. Yet he still did not speak. Under the night sky, the scene resembled a painting of contrasts. The small, determined girl, clenching the mask, standing before the quiet man who exuded an enigmatic aura. If anyone happened to witness it, they would undoubtedly wonder what had transpired and why there was such extreme tension between them. And as with all observers,
Luna herself was engulfed in countless questions for which she had yet to find answers.
The wind gradually became stronger, scattering a few pieces of old paper from the floor, encircling them, and then drifting off towards the railing. The moonlight seemed to settle upon the surface of the mask, reflecting a peculiar glow onto Luna's face, rendering her expression even more enigmatic. Orion remained motionless, his head slightly bowed, as if he were enduring a great sorrow. Between them, time seemed to drag on endlessly, until Luna sighed, her eyes gradually welling up with tears. She had never imagined that she would be standing on the rooftop of an old building on a moonlit night to question the man she loved in such a way. But that moment, which seemed as if it were only a dream, was terrifyingly real. Her question burst out, her gaze revealing, "Who are you?" In her heart, the fear was not only due to her suspicion of some secret, but also because of the prejudices she had carried from the past. She suddenly recalled the silent warnings of her family. They always reminded her of the distance between her and Orion, of the difference that they could not accept. And now, standing before an Orion who seemed like a stranger, her inner unease surged more intensely than ever. The silence persisted until Luna bit her lip, releasing a choked sob. She raised her hand to hurriedly wipe away the tear that had just fallen. Even though her heart was in turmoil, she did not permit herself to appear weak before Orion. She needed a clear answer. She needed to know if she was putting her trust in the right place. For if the love she had for him were to shatter, it would make her heart ache unbearably. More than anyone else, Luna understood that. The wind rose again, stronger, sweeping away the moist air of the night. The moonlight still shone brightly, as if illuminating both individuals, dissecting every layer of emotion. Finally, Orion slightly raised his head, his lips parting gently, as if he wanted to say something, but his voice was choked, unable to be uttered. His eyes briefly looked towards the mask, then turned towards Luna, carrying an unmistakable inner turmoil. What occurred on that rooftop resembled a tense drama in which only two actors, the two leads, were straining to confront the gap that separated them. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has their own pain, and only they themselves know where that shock comes from. In the dark, The sound of metal striking each other on the ground floor resounded, distant yet enough to shatter the brief silence. Luna was startled, lowering the mask, her heart surging with confusion. She knew that everything had only just begun, that a powerful undercurrent of turmoil was still waiting, and that she was still not ready to face it. The place where Luna lives is not a peaceful countryside, but a bustling metropolis, where different social classes intertwine. Despite its modern glamour, beneath its polished surface lurk deep-seated prejudices. It is within this environment that Luna grows up, a girl who appears carefree yet carries profound marks in her heart. Her family has long been known for their wealth, owning solid establishments. However, behind this prosperity, Luna's lineage holds a deeply conservative tradition, clinging to outdated beliefs, especially sensitive to any differences they deem unacceptable. Luna, now an adult, possesses a gentle beauty tinged with mystery. Her long, sleek black hair cascades down her shoulders, framing her large, round eyes and thick eyelashes. Her lips often carry a soft smile, yet behind it lies a lingering melancholy. She is not an extrovert, but she harbors a deep yearning for freedom. Since childhood, she has dreamed of distant journeys, of exploring the world on her own, escaping the constraints imposed by her family. But a past incident changed everything, forcing Luna to withdraw and confront the haunting fears rooted in societal prejudice. Luna's family belongs to a social class that values prestige above all else. They are eager to flaunt their outdated traditions and believe that anyone who is different is inherently untrustworthy. Though her parents love their children, they are rigid in their beliefs. They impose countless rules, fearing that their daughter might associate with the wrong people. Luna herself has been heavily influenced by this mindset, even though she constantly yearns to break free from it. Often, she feels as if she stands on the edge between two worlds, one bound by outdated norms, the other calling for understanding and acceptance of differences. In the past, Luna had witnessed certain incidents involving outsiders, as her family would call them, that made her wary of those who differed in race or religion. This fear gradually took root in her subconscious. Though Luna is inherently kind and compassionate, she struggles with an inner conflict when encountering those from unfamiliar backgrounds. She constantly questions whether what she has been told and what she has seen are truly accurate, yet she lacks the courage to seek the truth for herself. As Luna grows older, she immerses herself in her studies, eventually graduating and working at a creative office. Here, she has more opportunities to interact with different people, to listen and observe. The progressive viewpoints from her modern workplace slowly seep into her thoughts, but they are not enough to completely erase the fears planted in her since childhood. Every day, she continues to pretend that everything is normal, working, returning home, living within the safety of her shell. Yet, deep down, she longs for change. Then one day, Orion appears. He enters Luna's life quietly, like an unfamiliar breeze. Orion is a man whose appearance and background starkly contrast everything Luna's family reveres. His tanned skin, thick hair, and deep-set eyes evoke images of a distant land. He did not grow up in the kind of environment familiar to Luna. He comes from a community rich in cultural heritage, one that has suffered from the prejudices of conservative families like hers. However, Orion never displays insecurity. He remains calm, resolute, always willing to listen and share. At work, Luna initially views Orion as a quiet and kind colleague. Yet through brief conversations, she gradually discovers that he harbors great ambitions. Orion often speaks about the need for people to transcend divisions and live in harmony, to embrace diversity with respect. He frequently quotes philosophies on tolerance and the interconnectedness of cultures. Though Luna has yet to completely shed her apprehensions, she finds herself drawn to the sincerity in Orion's eyes. Through his stories, she glimpses a different world, one filled with misunderstood individuals, unfairly labeled simply because they do not conform to the standards imposed by the majority. Orion often speaks of the struggles his community faces, the hardships they endure. Despite this, he remains optimistic, believing that kindness and courage can change everything. This unsettles Luna. She begins to question whether the fears and prejudices she holds are rooted in truth or merely in misleading experiences from her past. To many, Orion is gentle, yet enigmatic. He seldom speaks of his past, only that he once left his homeland to escape confinement. He works quietly, integrates subtly, yet never loses his distinct identity. Some colleagues like him, while others remain skeptical, fueled by whispered rumors. As for Luna, she becomes increasingly captivated by Orion's inner world, sensing a hidden sorrow, an unspoken burden. The more she interacts with him, the more she yearns to be close to him, and soon, this closeness blossoms into an unusual love, one filled with passion yet weighed down by anxiety. The environment surrounding them, despite its modernity, still harbors invisible barriers. Even Orion's own family does not entirely support their relationship, knowing all too well the prejudices that exist in society. Orion wishes for understanding between both sides, yet he fears that Luna may be hurt by the stark differences. The city they live in, despite its dazzling lights, holds deep-seated divisions among its communities. People still gossip about couples who do not share the same roots, and Luna's family, ever conscious of social rumors, warns her from the start, "You should not get too close to someone like him." Hearing these words, Luna's heart sinks, yet she cannot suppress the feelings growing inside her. She knows that, compared to others, Orion is different. But that difference carries a unique beauty, one she longs to embrace. She keeps her relationship with Orion a secret, hoping that one day her family might understand, or at least accept him. Gradually, she convinces herself that everything will be fine, that their love is strong enough to overcome prejudice. However, the shadow of difference has not yet faded. In quiet moments, old memories resurface. The stories her family told her about people like Orion, the pain they were accused of causing. She cannot discern what is true and what is mere rumor. Yet, she remains haunted, bound by an invisible thread of fear that stops her from stepping forward. Many nights, she lies awake, wondering if she has the courage to cast aside the past, wondering if Orion is hiding something she has yet to uncover. Likewise, he does not rush to reveal everything, perhaps afraid that if she learns the full truth about his origins, she might recoil. Around them, the city glows with neon lights, skyscrapers standing tall, yet beneath it all lies an invisible wall of prejudice. People go about their lives, working, smiling at one another, but when it comes to relationships that do not fit societal norms, judgmental glances are cast without hesitation. Luna's family, Orion's family, and countless other families still bear the weight of outdated beliefs. Office gossip, casual mockery, avoiding glances, all contribute to a swirling cycle of discrimination that surrounds the two young souls striving to be together. And yet, within this suffocating atmosphere, their love blossoms. They are like two rare flowers growing in barren soil, desperately seeking drops of water to survive. Luna finds herself drawn to Orion, learning to see the world through his eyes. She dreams of introducing him to her parents, proving that he is not the person they assume him to be. In turn, Orion hopes Luna will meet his friends and family, so she can understand that he hides nothing from her. But the conflict remains unresolved, and neither of them has found a way forward. They hesitate, uncertain, allowing doubts to cloud their path. Tonight, under the moonlight, Luna trembles as she holds a mask in her hands, her mind tangled between past memories and present reality. On the rooftop of an old building, she feels the thin line separating love from fear, trust from doubt. Everything around her seems to push her toward a pivotal choice. She must confront the deepest fear ingrained in her heart, the fear named prejudice. Meanwhile, Orion watches, his expression heavy with pain as he sees the woman he loves still struggling to trust him completely. The city, their families, the clash of old and new values, all form the stage for their complex love story. Here, beneath the moon,
Luna and Orion stand at opposite ends of a predetermined fate. They cannot turn back, nor can they retreat. Their only option is to move forward, toward the truth that awaits. And on this silent moonlit night, they must either clasp each other's hands or let go forever. But for now, they remain frozen, lost in their own world, where past, present, and future blur into the whispering wind. The issue is that Luna harbors within her a great obsession, the obsession with difference. From a young age, she had witnessed or heard accounts of clashes, conflicts related to people outside the community. Her family, inherently conservative, did not spare any words in painting a gloomy picture of those with different skin colors, religions, or customs. Although Luna did not completely believe it, the words of her relatives slowly, little by little each day, created an invisible fear. She was torn between her own intuition, believing that not everyone who is different is bad, and the horrifying stories she had heard. Over time, this obsession gradually became more complicated, to the point that she could hardly distinguish what was a true belief and what was a baseless prejudice. When she met Orion, those conflicts rose even more strongly. The more she loved him, the more she was afraid. It was precisely the sincere love that made her not want to hurt him. But at the same time, the fear of her family, the fear of public opinion made her hesitate, indecisive. Many times, she secretly took Orion to secluded places, avoiding the attention of acquaintances. She had once promised him that she would soon make their relationship public. However, each time faced with the opportunity, she hesitated. The image of her parents appearing in her mind along with the warning, "You should not get involved in this relationship. That only brings you suffering." On the contrary, Orion felt a thin but very sharp barrier. He was originally a determined person, always valuing his own worth. But in the face of Luna's family's disdain, his heart could not avoid feeling resentful. Every time he appeared with her, if he encountered Luna's relatives, he immediately sensed scrutinizing looks. Without any words needed, he understood that he was being judged, being categorized as one of those untrustworthy people. Day by day, he increasingly saw the wall of prejudice preventing him from getting close to Luna, causing him to wonder whether he should patiently continue or leave her to ease his own pain. As for society, where they live, though seemingly glamorous, it still harbors many rigid streams of thought. There are those who support love that transcends racial boundaries, and there are those who shake their heads in opposition. Public opinion is full of contradictions, turning matters that were already complicated even more entangled. Sometimes, just a small rumor is enough to cause the couple labeled deviant to suffer pressure from all sides. Luna and Orion always had to pay attention to every behavior, every gesture, as if they were living amidst an undercurrent, at any moment liable to be overwhelmed by malicious whispers. What troubles Luna is, she cannot stop loving Orion. The feelings she has for him are very sincere, while her rational mind always rings the warning bell about the prejudices that she had nurtured since childhood. The constant inner struggle eroded Luna, creating cracks in the relationship. Sometimes, just an offhand remark from Orion mentioning difference made her lost in thought, recalling the dark stories that she had heard. She felt that she was being unfair to Orion, but she did not have enough courage to discard the family barrier. At night, every time faced with darkness, she blamed herself for being weak. But the next day, she continued to pretend as if nothing had happened, and the spiral of fear kept repeating. Luna's parents not only warned her, but occasionally coldly mentioned that she was disgracing the family if she remained attached to someone like Orion. They believed that their daughter was being too dreamy, not understanding what differences in culture, religion, and tradition meant. In fact, there was even a time when they accidentally uttered harsh words, causing Luna deep hurt. She did not know whether her family truly wished her happiness or only wanted to maintain a clean image in front of society. This contradiction continued to erode Luna's faith, pushing her into a state of both love and fear, not daring to resolutely go against her family. Meanwhile, Orion increasingly felt the distance. He saw in Luna's eyes a sense of insecurity,
whenever the two discussed the future. He heard her half-hearted confessions about her family, about prejudices, and he understood that she was torn. He himself was also tired of always having to prove that he was not bad, that he deserved respect, that his love for Luna was genuine. He sometimes wanted to give up, but love had seeped deeply, and he still hoped for a miracle to happen. The pressure of society also surrounded them, making both of them exhausted. Luna's friends sometimes hesitated, advising her to find someone safer. Some people whispered that she was too foolish to love someone from a different world. There were those who ridiculed, and some who casually mentioned stories of division. Even there were ominous words about the tragedies that occur when attempting to reconcile two different cultures. All of these were like knives cutting into her trust, making Luna even more confused. Similarly, on Orion's side, his friends, who knew the situation, also reminded him to be cautious, not to give his whole heart to a girl whose family did not accept him. The truth is, the city where the two live, though thought to be vast, turned out to be incredibly small. News travels very fast, and prejudices spread even faster. Even though Luna and Orion tried to keep their relationship a secret, there were still times when they encountered scrutinizing glances and whispers, small and loud behind their backs. All of this made them gradually withdraw, only meeting in silence. But that silence itself cannot hide forever, because love inherently needs to be public, needs to be acknowledged. Luna feared that if she hid it for too long, Orion would be hurt by the feeling of being denied. Orion feared that if it were made public too soon, Luna would lose her family, lose protection. This vicious circle was like an invisible net binding both of them tightly. That is precisely the core issue they have to face. A deep love between two different people being threatened by family, by society, and above all, by the very fears within Luna's heart. She feared the prejudices, the wounds of the past, feared that both her family and society would push Orion away from her. He feared being looked down upon, feared being blamed, and feared causing the girl he loved to suffer. Both of them, although longing to be together, still stood before the impenetrable fortress of old traditions and outdated thoughts. That moonlit night, on the terrace of the old building, was exactly when Luna suddenly realized that she could no longer continue to hide. The mask that shone under the moonlight which she held in her hand was like a symbol for the coverings, the obsessions that had made her not dare to fully believe in Orion. The warnings from her family, the pressures from society, all created an undercurrent in her mind. And now, as she faced Orion, that undercurrent surged into fear. She wondered about his background, about what she still doubted. Does his past have anything to do with those old tragedies? That question was like a knife piercing both of their hearts. You should not get involved in this relationship. Her parents' words kept echoing like an obsessive refrain. She did not want to believe it. She had seen how warm Orion was, how sincere he was. Yet the images, the stories that she had heard since childhood, stories of conflict, of revenge, of sorrow, made her feel clumsy and indecisive. She feared that one day her family would officially confront Orion. She feared the malicious words from outsiders. She also feared that he, in the end, was hiding a terrible truth that she had never known. All these fears, these mixed obsessions, interwoven, formed a chaotic picture in Luna's mind. Orion himself was not happy at all, having to always face suspicion. He sensed the love Luna had for him, but he also clearly saw the hesitation in her eyes. Sometimes he wondered, does she truly trust me? Every time he thought of the moment when her family mocked him, he wanted to let go so as not to make Luna feel awkward. But then, in those moments when the two were together, when she smiled brightly, her eyes radiant, he could not bear to leave. Love had bound the two of them together, yet the core issue, the distinction, the doubt, the lingering obsessions of the past, still hovered over them like a sword over their heads. And that is also the reason why, when Orion saw the mask in Luna's hand that night,
He was astonished.
He knew that she had to gather all her courage to stand there, to look him straight in the eye, to question him, but he was also pained because he understood that as long as her fear had not been erased, they would never be able to be completely together. He remained silent not because he did not want to speak, but because he did not know how to explain in order for Luna to overcome the impenetrable wall that she and her family had built. Thus, the core issue is the love between two different people is being threatened by family, by society, and above all, by the very fears within Luna's heart. She worries that old tragedies will repeat, fears making the wrong move, fears causing her family pain. Orion, on the other hand, fears being hurt, fears an endless struggle with no way out. They both long to overcome all prejudices, but harsh reality prevents them. Both of them stand before a choice, either to face it together or each to step back so that the obsession endures. For Luna, this decision is not just about love, but also about whether she can conquer the fear that has been sown since childhood. For Orion, it is about whether he can continue to hope in Luna's trust and love, or whether he should give up to protect his own heart. On the terrace where the moonlight shines, everything is laid bare. Luna's question, "Who are you?" was not only directed towards Orion, but also towards herself as she hesitated. Am I someone who dares to fight for love, or merely a coward in the face of prejudice? At the same time, Orion's silence also implied, will you trust me even though I am different, or will you turn away?
They both awaited an answer from each other, awaited for themselves to make the final choice. And the core issue in the end
lies in Luna's own heart, where the barriers of the past are in fierce conflict with her present feelings. Tonight, the answer has not yet appeared, but they knew that sooner or later, they would have to face the truth, together or apart. As the evening sunlight gently cast its glow through the large window in Luna's living room, the atmosphere felt heavier than usual. Her family, including close relatives and a few friends, gathered around the aged wooden table. Everyone tried to maintain a composed demeanor, but beneath the surface, tension lingered. From time to time, glances flickered between Luna and Orion, weaving an intricate web of unspoken emotions. Luna did her best to conceal her unease, but the tight press of her lips betrayed the effort it took to keep her composure. Orion, sitting not too far away, remained observant, his usual calm demeanor unshaken. Amidst the hushed ambiance, murmurs surfaced about Orion's past, about how he came from a community that Luna's family considered different. No one spoke loudly, yet the unsettling feelings seeped into Luna's mind. She realized that in recent days, whenever Orion was mentioned, voices would lower as if stating his origins outright would invite misfortune. They never said it directly, but Luna knew she was being cornered into an impossible choice. Either stand by Orion or heed the warnings laced with prejudice from her family. Not long ago, Luna had stumbled upon an old mask in a rarely opened drawer. The mask bore intricate carvings, its surface reflecting a faint, ethereal glow, as though it had once played a role in some ancient ritual. When she turned it over, an old cut was visible along the edge, accompanied by strange characters she couldn't decipher. The mask evoked a sense of something distant, as if tied to a chapter of her life she had never heard her family speak of clearly. Her mind spiraled with questions. Why was this mask here? Could it have any connection to Orion? Luna's anxiety deepened in recent days, as she noticed an inexplicable reaction every time Orion came near. Her mind urged her to move closer, to embrace him, yet her body instinctively recoiled. Even the slightest touch of his hand or the mere sound of his deep, soothing voice sent her heart pounding, not just with longing, but with an unnameable fear. At first, she brushed it off as the nervous excitement of love, but over time, it became an undeniable response. She flinched, withdrew, and at times, her hands even trembled. Since childhood, Luna had grown up in an environment where safety was paramount.
Her family rarely ventured beyond what they considered familiar, always choosing the cautious path. As she matured, Luna sensed that the world was far bigger than what she had been taught, and Orion was the embodiment of that truth. He was different in background, language, and culture, yet he carried an undeniable sincerity. Luna trusted Orion's heart, but she couldn't ignore the anxiety his presence stirred in those around her. Now, with the mask's discovery, it felt like a warning bell had rung. Perhaps her family had a past entangled with the very people Orion descended from. Orion was not the prying type, but he couldn't ignore Luna's growing unease. Each time he tried to approach her with words of comfort or casual conversation, she seemed to pull away. It wasn't just hesitation. It was as if an invisible wall separated them. At first, Orion thought Luna was merely struggling with the pressure from her family, unsure about making their relationship public. But her recent behavior, the fear in her eyes, the trembling, hinted at something far deeper than family disapproval. This wasn't just ordinary apprehension. It was as if Luna was haunted by an inexplicable dread. He had tried to ask gently, "Are you feeling unwell? Is something scaring you?" But Luna only offered brief, evasive replies, avoiding his gaze. Orion's patience grew thin, not out of frustration, but out of concern. He knew their love could not last if she continued to hide her thoughts. More than that, the way she looked at him lately, full of tenderness yet clouded by distress, filled him with unease. He feared that she was shouldering an unbearable burden, one she was too afraid to share. Meanwhile, Luna's family and friends, already harboring reservations about Orion, now had even more reason to be alarmed. Seeing Luna's erratic state, they quickly concluded that Orion was the source of the trouble. Whispers spread. "It's because of his background, because he brings risks we cannot foresee." Some even confronted Luna directly, demanding, "You must choose. Stay with your family, live safely as you always have, or throw it all away for this man." The weight of their words crushed Luna. She loved Orion more deeply than ever, yet an unrelenting fear clung to her. Each time she recalled the eerie sensation of touching the mask, the jagged cut along its edge, the unreadable symbols, an ominous feeling crept into her heart. Sleepless nights followed, her mind swirling with questions. What happened in my family's past? Does this mask connect to Orion's origins? Why do I react so strongly when I look into his eyes? The very eyes I once found so kind and beautiful. No one understood Luna's inner turmoil better than she did. She longed for love, yearned to break free from narrow prejudices, but something unnamed haunted her from within. Orion, despite his patience, was beginning to worry. He faced two choices: press her for answers, or step back and let her confront her fears alone. Then, one evening, as a faint breeze rustled through Luna's window, her fingers traced the mask's carvings once more. A distant sensation, like an echo from the past, stirred within her. Suddenly, an image flashed in her mind. A man wearing this very mask, standing in the darkness, surrounded by screams, desperate cries, and the flickering glow of crimson flames. The vision was fleeting, blurred like a buried memory, yet vivid enough to send a shiver down her spine. In that moment, Luna realized, perhaps my family was involved in something connected to Orion's people. Her hand trembled as she placed the mask down, her heartbeat racing. She wasn't sure if the vision was a mere dream or a sliver of forgotten reality, but she now understood one thing. Her subconscious fear of Orion wasn't just the result of external pressure. It was something much deeper, rooted in a past she had yet to uncover. If she didn't confront it, this fear could destroy everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Luna wandered along the stone path behind her home, seeking solitude. The rustling leaves and whispering winds felt both soothing and ominous, as if they carried a message she wasn't ready to hear. What would become of her and Orion if she remained trapped by these fears? Would she dare to break free from prejudice, from horrific memories, from her family's imposed fate? The answers loomed on the brink of revelation. On that twilight path, Luna whispered to herself, "I can't leave Orion, but I can't abandon my family either. There must be a way." Hours later, as she returned to her room, she realized her palms were clammy with sweat. Just the thought of choosing between Orion and her family sent pain through her chest. The conflict wasn't just an external one. It was a battle within herself, a struggle against the ghosts of her past. From a distance, Orion watched her weary figure, his heart aching. He had asked himself countless times, should I stay and be patient, or walk away to spare her pain? But his answer was always the same. I love her, and I want to stand by her side. He resolved to find the right moment to demand the truth. He could no longer let Luna carry her burdens alone. Yet, at this very moment, Luna's family was growing more determined. One of her closest friends even said bluntly, "You should choose your family. Between a man with a complicated past and the stable life you already have, isn't the choice obvious?" The words cut Luna deeply, but she didn't argue. She simply shook her head, unwilling to respond. Deep down, she already knew where her heart belonged, but the weight of invisible fears and her family's warnings tormented her. From here on, the signs of an approaching storm became undeniable. The mask remained tucked away, yet every time Luna's eyes landed on it, unease prickled her skin. Worse still, strange dreams became more frequent. Fragmented glimpses of a dark past, echoes of screams, fleeing shadows, and a dim light reflecting off fabric that resembled the mask. She awoke in the dead of night, drenched in sweat, chest heaving with fear. Luna's emotions turned into a battlefield. She loved Orion, yet she couldn't understand why her body reacted with such visceral fear. At times, she gazed at his smile with longing, only to be haunted moments later by an image of blood-soaked memories she couldn't explain. Was this a deep-seated fear planted in her by her family? Or was it a real buried memory of past suffering? And as Orion watched her from across the room, he knew whatever was hiding in the past was about to surface. And when it did, their love would either survive or shatter completely. That night, as the pouring rain outside the window made the space even more gloomy, Luna sat curled up in front of the fireplace in the attic room. Here, she could avoid the prying eyes of her family, temporarily escaping from a series of never-ending questions. In the dim light, Luna slowly flipped through the old notebook, a type of family diary that she accidentally found along with the mask. Each yellowed page recorded a few scattered lines, with some parts of the writing smeared by ink. But the highlighted line that caught her attention was a short passage recounting a tragic event in the past. Fateful night. An important family member was severely injured due to a group of strangers. Although the wording was fragmented, without clear details, Luna immediately associated it with some incident related to Orion's community. Suddenly, her memory seemed to be awakened, causing her to recall her childhood. She suddenly remembered that she had once heard the adults in the house discussing some act of violence in which one of her relatives was severely injured. At that time, Luna was still a child, not understanding what it all meant. But the adults always reminded, never get close to those who are different from us. That image, that warning, had followed her throughout her childhood, hidden deep in her subconscious. Now, when looking at the notebook and recalling the scattered account, Luna believed that it was precisely Orion's skin color, or language, representing a group of people once regarded as the cause of her family's pain, that was becoming the greatest barrier. She embraced the notebook to her chest, tears streaming down. She did not want to blame Orion, because she truly felt that his heart was sincere. But what she had heard in her haunting childhood memories made her hesitate. Could it be that it is your difference that caused the tragedy of the past? And will that tragedy repeat itself? The next morning, as the sky was just beginning to brighten, Orion arrived at Luna's house earlier than usual. He grasped her hand tightly, gently asking, "I see that you are not well. If there is anything you want to share, I am am always ready to listen." Hearing Orion's voice, Luna suddenly felt her heart tighten, for she had just endured a long night with haunting memories. She stepped back slightly, seeing the hesitation in her eyes. Orion reiterated, this time with a hint of determination. "We cannot keep hiding forever. Please tell me what you are afraid of." After a moment of hesitation, Luna briefly recounted what she had read, that her family harbored a grudge against a community with which Orion was associated. She told it very briefly, with many details still hidden, because she herself was not sure. Hearing those words, Orion was shocked. In his mind, a thought sparked. Perhaps the reason Luna often trembled when I touched her originated from this deep-seated fear. He felt sorrow, but also was indignant at the prospect of his community being baselessly accused. Orion then asked for more details, but Luna only shook her head, saying that she only remembered that her family had once encountered an incident, and from then they believed people like Orion were a threat. This event left Orion deeply shocked. He did not expect that his romantic relationship with Luna would be entangled with an old tragedy. He remembered the teachings of his grandparents, that their community had once been misunderstood and had suffered many injustices. Now, it seemed that those injustices were directly related to Luna's family. He fell silent, not knowing what to say, only hoping that Luna would understand that he was innocent. But a nagging question arose in his mind. Could it be that Luna also secretly believes that his community is the cause of pain, that he belongs to that evil? This news quickly reached the ears of other members of Luna's family. Instead of sympathizing, they became even more aggressive. They rekindled the old grudge, claiming that it was clear evidence to prove that Orion and people like him were untrustworthy. One person even sharply declared, "If you continue to associate with him, the painful events of the past will recur." Hearing those words, Luna became even more conflicted. She did not want to believe that Orion was a bad person, but the images of the past that had been told over the years had not given her enough courage to brush them aside. Orion saw the attitude of Luna's family, feeling the prevailing disdain. He could not contain his disappointment. He went to Luna, trying to explain, "My family has not harmed anyone. For years, we have always lived harmoniously. The tragic events you have heard about may be misunderstandings or exaggerations." Luna's heart stirred. She understood that the love Orion had for her was real. But paradoxically, in that moment, she still did not have concrete evidence to vindicate him. Nor did she have enough courage to completely refute the vague memories of the past tragedy. Luna's family, using their authority and pressure, began to advise her. "You should distance yourself from him to ensure your safety. Do not let history repeat itself." The tender memories of bloodshed, the laments that she had fleetingly seen in her dreams, or in the stories of her childhood, served as a harsh reminder. Luna felt that she was being besieged by two forces. On one side, the intense love urging her to believe in Orion, and on the other, the inherited fear deeply ingrained in her mind. After that tense conversation, Luna went up to her room, closed the door, and sat silently for a long while. She remembered the moment when Orion looked at her with sad eyes, in which there was also the hurt that he could not hide. She reproached herself. Why can't I be more trusting? Why? Based solely on rumors and an unclear past, do I let him suffer doubt? However, immediately after, another voice resounded in her head. Better to be cautious. Our family is not wrong. What if horrible things recur? This painful sorrow made Luna feel as if she had been lost in a vortex. The final scene of that day was her collapsing onto the table, tears streaming down, not knowing whom to believe. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and the cold wind sneaked through the gap in the door. Everything seemed to sink into gloomy darkness. She was completely at a loss between two streams of emotion, protecting love or listening to her family. Meanwhile, Orion returned to his residence with a heavy heart. He envisioned the difficulties he would continue to face, knowing that the storm had only just begun. But he also resolved not to back down, for he believed that if the truth were revealed, Luna would see him and his community for what they truly were. Nevertheless, Luna's turmoil made him understand that she needed more patience than ever.
The next day, the sky seemed to herald a day of scorching sun. Luna's family still discussed the threat coming from Orion, and some even declared they were ready to intervene forcefully if they saw Luna still deeply involved in this relationship. Every word, every action of theirs was like a knife stabbing into Luna's heart. She could not abandon the one she loved, but she also did not want to turn her back on her family. All the information she had indicated that one of her relatives had suffered horrific violence. Worse still, that very fear was now being blown up and had become a net that strangled her love. Under that pressure, Luna wavered, not knowing whether she should continue her relationship with Orion or stop in order to avoid causing further strife. She was in pain because she felt that everyone around her did not stand by her and Orion. No one was willing to listen to the story from various angles. Luna's family uniformly believed that they were the source of the disaster, while Luna was the naive one. In a moment of despair, she could only close her eyes, trying to find a mental refuge. She thought about the beautiful memories that she and Orion had experienced. The quiet but warm dates, the way he gently stroked her hair, his words sharing his desire to break down the barriers between the two communities. She believed that what he said was sincere. However, the painful memories that her family had suffered still weighed heavily on her. She was afraid that she was repeating the mistakes of the previous generation, afraid that the truth was that Orion had been involved in things far worse than she thought. The story concluded that afternoon with the scene of Luna standing in the yard, silently looking up at the blue sky. She realized that she had never felt as lonely as she did at that moment. The urge to protect love mesmerized her, but the warnings about grudge or old pain also resounded persistently. She was torn, she was lost, not knowing whom to trust, and it was this very moment that set the premise for what she would do next. Would she have enough courage to seek the truth, or would she accept distancing herself from Orion due to family pressure? After days of tension, Luna had no choice but to seek the answers herself. She began seriously considering tracking down the remaining witnesses, those who might provide a clearer account of the past tragedy. She understood that only by uncovering the truth could she free herself from the haunting shadows of history, and more importantly, hold on to Orion. However, this meant going against her family's wishes, as they wanted nothing more than to bury the past. One early morning, Luna slipped out of the house, avoiding the prying eyes of her relatives. She carried an old notebook and a mask, determined to meet a witness she had heard was still alive in a secluded suburban area. This person had once been a friend of her family, but for some reason, they had moved away long ago and lost contact. As she sat on the long bus ride, Luna gazed out at the unfamiliar scenery unfolding beyond the window. Her heart pounded with both anxiety and determination. This was the first time she had fought for love on her own terms. Meanwhile, Orion was facing his own struggles. Though he didn't know Luna's exact plan, he sensed that she was trying to find a way for them to be together. Within his own community, many advised him to leave the city to avoid trouble. They feared the old conflicts would resurface. One person even warned him bluntly, "Stay away from that girl and her family. They've never seen us as equals." Orion listened, his heart heavy. He cherished Luna, but history had made even his own people distrust those like her family. Despite the pressure, Orion remained steadfast. He believed that barriers could only be broken if someone had the courage to challenge them. His love for Luna, combined with his faith in her goodness, made it impossible for him to walk away. Even as his friends and family urged him to let go, he was certain that Luna wouldn't give up either. She may have seemed fragile, but he saw the fire in her eyes, a deep yearning to break free from prejudice. Back at Luna's home, her sudden disappearance did not go unnoticed. Her family was furious. They believed she had gone too far, risking everything to defend someone who was different, reopening wounds they had long tried to bury. Some family members even began tailing her, fearing that Orion was manipulating her. The conflict escalated to the point where someone growled, "If necessary, we will stop her at all costs. We can't let her make a foolish mistake." These words foreshadowed a confrontation that would not be easily resolved. Luna arrived at the small house where the witness had lived for years. Stepping past the creaky old gate, She paused at the leaf-covered courtyard. The elderly owner, frail in appearance, immediately looked unsettled when they saw the mask in her hands. When Luna expressed her desire to ask about the past, the person's face darkened. After a long hesitation, they finally spoke, recalling a tragic night when Luna's family had been attacked by an unknown group. However, they hinted that the identities and motives of the attackers had never been confirmed. Everything had been based on rumors that the culprits were from Orion's community. A reckless accusation, the witness muttered. One that I am not sure was ever true. Luna's heart nearly stopped. Her whole life, she had been told that they were responsible for the crime, while her family had been the victims. But what if the truth had been misunderstood, or worse, deliberately distorted? She pressed for more details, but the witness only sighed. I can't say for certain. By the time I arrived at the scene, it was chaos. Your family was grieving, and someone claimed that the other group was to blame. The sadness in their eyes carried a hint of guilt, as if they had been keeping this secret for years. The more Luna listened, the stronger her belief grew that something had been hidden or exaggerated. The mask in her hands was mentioned as evidence linking the attackers to an ancient ritual, one that Orion's community was often associated with. But what if that was just a convenient excuse? What if someone had exploited existing prejudices to mislead them? She realized her family had only ever heard one side of the story, and that same narrative had been ingrained in her since childhood. Leaving the house, Luna returned to the city, her mind racing. She wanted to tell Orion immediately, but didn't dare call. Her family might find out. Instead, she decided to meet him in secret. That afternoon, they arranged to meet at a small cafe hidden in a narrow alley. The moment Orion saw her, he noticed her anxious expression. She lowered her voice and told him everything she had learned. Orion gently took her hand under the table, his voice thick with emotion. Then maybe we've been falsely accused all this time. Your family believes we were involved, but the truth is still unclear. Luna nodded, tears slipping down her face. I don't know how to convince them, but I have to keep searching. Orion looked at her with deep gratitude. In that moment, he saw a flicker of hope, even though he knew the road ahead would be long. My family is also afraid, he admitted. They fear that you and your people will never stop blaming us. They think we can never truly belong together, but I trust you. He encouraged Luna to keep seeking the truth. Only then could they have a love that wasn't haunted by the past. In the following days, Luna's clashes with her family intensified. They discovered her secret investigation and did everything they could to stop her. One evening, a relative blocked her path and snapped, "Are you trying to humiliate this family? Those people caused us pain, and you're defending them?" Luna wanted to explain that there was no solid evidence, but their anger drowned out her words. Things took a darker turn when some of her more extreme relatives reached out to others who shared their segregationist beliefs. They started discussing ways to drive Orion away. They feared their daughter would become too entangled, that history would repeat itself. The conflict was no longer just verbal. It was on the verge of turning violent. Every day, Luna and Orion felt the tension closing in around them, but Luna refused to give up. She dug through old records, re-examined the notebook, and spoke with more witnesses. She began noticing inconsistencies. First, no one had actually confirmed that the attackers were from Orion's community. Second, the mask, supposedly linked to an ancient ritual, could have been used as a diversion. Third, there was no concrete description of the perpetrators. Everything was based on assumptions, and Orion's people had been blamed out of pure coincidence. Then, Luna heard whispers about a mysterious figure. Someone who lived on the outskirts of the city. A drifter who owned a mask similar to hers. She wasn't sure if it was connected, but her instincts urged her to investigate. Meanwhile, Orion faced growing resistance from his own people. Many insisted he abandon Luna immediately. Her family has always seen us as the enemy. Do you really think this will end well? But Orion was resolute. Luna is trying to clear our names. She deserves our trust. Some supported him, others vehemently opposed. The growing division within his own community pained him, but he refused to back down. He started secretly searching through old archives, hoping to find records of similar incidents. If he could prove the truth, Perhaps Luna's family would see they had blamed the wrong people. The situation took a dangerous turn when Luna's family decided to take direct action against Orion. They believed it was the only way to stop her. Pressure mounted, threats, ultimatums, and silent warnings filled the air. Rumors spread that Orion and his people were a threat. One night, Luna received a cryptic message instructing her to meet in a deserted alley behind an old building. The sender, an unknown figure, claimed to have crucial information about the mask and her family's past. She hesitated, fearing it was a trap, but the need for answers overpowered her doubts. Keeping it secret even from Orion, she set off into the night. And as she stepped into the darkness, Luna knew she was either walking into the truth or straight into danger. Luna silently left the room before the dawn appeared. The flickering streetlights cast their shadows on the old walls, evoking for her the long, winding corridor of the house where she grew up. In her eyes, anxiety was compounded by a series of pressing questions that had accumulated over the past few days. She had discovered anomalies in the old documents. When she accidentally compared the records related to the attack from years ago with some clues that Orion had been secretly gathering. For a long time, she had always believed that his community was the cause of the family's tragedy. But now, everything seemed to be reversed. Luna stood in the middle of the small kitchen, staring intently at the bundle of faded papers that she had just recovered from the archive. The name Orion, along with the scattered notes, did not match at all with the old story that her parents had always passed down. There were traces indicating that a staging or a misattribution of blame had taken place long ago. Her lips trembled, because every piece of evidence indicated that the one responsible for causing the discrimination and harm was not Orion or those of his community. In the corner of the room, Luna's old family portrait appeared faintly. She remembered that when she was young, her parents often recounted the harsh discrimination that had taken place, instilling the heavy notion that the Orion community was a threat. It was that very story that shaped her thinking, causing her to fear the difference that Orion carried. But now, the old diary pages revealed the opposite truth. Perhaps her parents, or at least someone in her family, had proactively constructed a wall of hostility. They wanted to hide their mistakes, while at the same time laying all the blame on an innocent group of people. At that moment, Luna felt her heart clench. She exhaled, hastily gathered the documents, then left the kitchen, moving towards the brightly lit living room. Orion sat silently on the sofa, with the mask they had once found on the terrace on a full moon night still in his hand. It was a memento symbolizing a mysterious bond, and also the keystone that kept Luna in constant doubt. Now, seeing him, she was not only moved by affection, but also troubled by a sense of guilt, recalling the moment of confronting Orion. Luna had once doubted him, had once turned her back when she believed that he was involved in the dreadful attack. But now, she realized that she might have been gravely mistaken. Having just set the bundle of documents down, she looked at Orion with a lost gaze. He slowly stood up, gently placing his hand on her trembling shoulders. Orion softly asked about what she had discovered. His voice was warm but filled with caution, as if he feared hurting Luna once again. She could not speak, only gently nodded and then showed him the pages of paper. Each line of text, covered in the dust of time, each piece of evidence that she had pieced together over many days, painted the truth that left them both stunned. It turned out that there was no evidence whatsoever implicating the Orion community from years ago. All the damage originated from the scheming of some members of Luna's family, who wanted to protect their honor and their own interests. They exploited existing prejudices, fabricating a scapegoating story aimed at shifting the blame onto the different ones. That attack, if it truly occurred, also arose from some internal feud rather than from Orion himself or those like him. Luna fell silent as the truth gradually manifested in every page of the documents. She remembered the times when she had unconsciously avoided Orion, the painful memories that she had always laid upon his family. Now everything collapsed.
long-held beliefs were overturned, leaving her at a loss about what to do next. She realized that everything she had believed might have arisen from rumors that distorted the truth, rather than from reality. At that moment, Orion placed his hand on her shoulder, softly calling her name. Luna looked up, gazing deeply into his eyes, and saw in them a rare compassion. She choked on her words, wanting to apologize for having misjudged him, wanting to tell him that she was deeply remorseful, but only managing to utter a few broken words. Orion squeezed her hand, nodding softly as if in silent understanding. They both stared at each other in silence for a long time. Regret welled up within Luna, and a mixture of pain and compassion flickered in Orion. By this moment, she truly felt the weight of the past that had haunted her life, and also realized how much prejudice he had suffered without ever complaining. This lingering sorrow did not end there. Luna's family had long built their reputation by asserting that they were the victims of a deficient or suspect community. If she officially exposed this matter, it would be tantamount to undermining the authority and honor of the family. Luna's eyes darkened when she thought of her parents' reaction, or those who had steadfastly held the view that Orion was a threat. They were certainly not prepared for her to reveal everything. In a moment, Luna recalled her father's warning. Don't get involved with those who are not of your own blood. You will bring calamity upon yourself. But now, that very warning resonated like a knife stabbing deeply, because she realized where the truth lay. Luna's heart pounded wildly, half wanting to expose everything immediately, half fearing that her own family would turn their backs on her. The stillness of the night enveloped the room. Both of them stood still, sharing their astonishment. A few soft sounds from outside on the street echoed, indicating that morning was approaching. Luna knew she did not have much time to hesitate. The incident from the past had divided countless people, and if she did not act, the misunderstandings would continue to spread, causing more people to suffer injustice. As the morning mist gradually enveloped, Luna decided that she had to see it through. She nodded at Orion, her eyes shining with determination. She understood that only by revealing every aspect of the past could they both be freed from this burden. At the same time, she was aware that her family would not stand by and watch her drag the curtain of secrets into the light. In the gradually fading night, she and Orion still held each other's hands tightly. They were silent, yet there was mutual understanding. This was only the beginning of a greater storm. Luna's family, undoubtedly, was afraid of losing power, or at least their dignity, for what they had built over so long might crumble into nothingness. And Luna, now, had no turning back. The following afternoon, the harsh sunlight pierced through the window panes, flooding the grand hall where Luna's family had gathered. The air was thick with tension as Luna and Orion entered, carrying a stack of documents they had painstakingly uncovered. Though her face still bore traces of anxiety, she was no longer overwhelmed with fear. She knew this confrontation was inevitable, and now was the time to expose the lies that had been forced upon Orion and his community. In the right corner of the room, Luna's parents and a few relatives sat in silence, their expressions a mix of anger and unease. They were well aware that their daughter had unearthed significant truths. Some of the younger members of the family, though not fully grasping the details, appeared uneasy, sensing the suffocating atmosphere from the sharp glares of the older generation. Luna took a deep breath and stepped to the center of the room. She spoke with unwavering confidence, presenting each piece of evidence, every suppressed testimony from the past. Each document was like a dagger piercing through the walls of deception, gradually revealing that the attack from years ago had no connection to Orion or anyone in his community. Her family, or at least those who sought power and influence, had fabricated and distorted events to direct public outrage toward a marginalized group. Orion stood beside Luna, quietly presenting documents and comparison images. He did not raise his voice, yet his composed demeanor unsettled even the most stubborn opponents. Some of Luna's family members initially tried to argue, accusing Orion of fabricating lies. But as the evidence became increasingly undeniable, many of them began to waver. Suddenly, a relative of Luna slammed the table,
raising his voice in protest against dredging up old matters. This figure, once influential, now feared the family's reputation would be shattered and desperately denied everything. His furious outburst echoed through the room, pushing the tension to its peak. His rage flared like a final attempt to intimidate Luna. She shuddered momentarily, but her determined gaze did not falter. Orion instinctively shifted forward, ready to shield her should the confrontation escalate. Harsh words ricocheted through the room, like flames attempting to incinerate any glimmer of justice. At that moment, Luna's father, who had previously fought against her investigations, sank into his chair. He stared blankly at an old record, shaking his head in exhaustion. His figure trembled as he realized that years of calculated deceit were on the verge of exposure. A few other relatives who had once blindly believed the fabricated narrative now showed hesitant, conflicted expressions. They were beginning to grasp that the rumors about Orion's community were nothing more than products of irrational fear and selfish agendas. The argument reached its breaking point when one of the most obstinate figures raised a hand threateningly toward Luna. In that instant, Orion swiftly stepped forward, blocking any potential harm. His timely intervention ensured Luna remained unharmed, but the fleeting panic in her eyes revealed a sobering truth. This confrontation was not just about verbal assaults. Real danger lurked beneath the surface. Yet, faced with this brutal choice, Luna did not retreat. She scanned the familiar yet darkened faces before her, recalling all the pain Orion had endured. She also understood that if she chose to remain silent, she would be walking the same path as her family, drowning in the same prejudices. Orion's gaze was warm, encouraging. He gently reminded her that he was willing to fight for their love, but the final decision rested with her. Whether she stood firm or yielded would reflect her true desires. He could not make the choice for her, nor did he wish for her to feel pressured by him. Every word Orion spoke illuminated the uncertain path before Luna. She took a deep breath. In the past, she had always wavered when forced to choose between family and love. Now, knowing the entire truth was built on lies, she realized there was no other option but to stand by Orion. Silence filled the room. A few individuals quietly left, their expressions a mix of frustration and resignation. Others hesitated before stepping forward, conveying their sympathy and seeking a chance to make amends. Although change could not happen instantly, at least they had begun to recognize the truth. Luna held Orion's gaze for a long moment. The tension had drained her, but she had no regrets. She knew the road ahead would still be fraught with challenges, as some in her family stubbornly clung to their old beliefs. However, standing here, amidst the turmoil and unresolved conflict, she firmly declared that she would no longer live under the shadow of misguided traditions. Orion gently squeezed her hand, reaffirming that he would never abandon her, as long as she dared to break free from the fears instilled in her by her family. He understood the internal battle she was facing, but wanted her to choose based on her true happiness, not because of his influence. In that moment, Luna looked around. She saw lingering hostility in some eyes, but in others, she saw glimmers of belief. It was then that she fully understood. Love could only endure when all dark secrets were brought to light. Only when fear was stripped of its disguise could people truly confront the truth. She turned to Orion and smiled faintly. Hand in hand, they stepped through the doorway that had just swung open, leaving behind the noise and chaos. They both knew the storm was far from over, but at the very least, they had taken the first steps toward clearing Orion's name and giving Luna the chance to break free from her family's grip. Nothing could stop her now from standing up for the truth. And at that very moment, in the midst of a household torn by emotions, Luna chose her heart over the familiar path of tradition. Orion walked beside her, steadfast and unwavering, ready to shield her from any storm that might come their way. The road ahead was long, but together they were ready to face it. Luna stepped out of the room with a calm demeanor, more composed than ever. She had spent an entire night reflecting on everything, especially the silent advice from Orion, the man who had once been hurt by her very own fears. The atmosphere in the house had grown still,
as if everyone was waiting for something to erupt. Her parents, though their eyes remained doubtful, were already seated in the living room, ready to listen to their daughter. Her mother looked weary after the relentless arguments of the past days, while her father maintained his stern attitude. They had no idea what this conversation would lead to, but Luna's expression made it clear that she had made up her mind. Standing before her family, she met their eyes one by one and began speaking in a gentle yet resolute tone. She recounted the entire misunderstanding from the past, mentioning the events that had led her to believe Orion's community was the cause of tragedy. She admitted that for a long time, she had avoided the truth, allowing old fears to distort her perception of love. Her voice was slow but firm, asserting that the prejudice passed down from previous generations had been deeply ingrained in her mind, shaping a false reality. When Luna fell silent, her father flinched slightly, his hardened eyes flickering with a trace of hesitation. Perhaps he hadn't expected his daughter to confront him so directly, urging the family to reconsider their long-held beliefs. Her mother, on the other hand, remained quiet, only offering a slight nod. While her parents still seemed unprepared to fully change their stance, Luna knew this was the only moment to shatter the wall of outdated traditions. Meanwhile, Orion stood outside the door, patiently waiting for Luna's signal. He had no way of knowing which direction the conversation would take, but he was ready to speak up if her family attempted to hurt the woman he loved. Over time, he had endured a whirlwind of emotions: the anger of being misunderstood, the pain of being rejected, and the unwavering love he felt for Luna. However, Orion had always reminded himself that he could not let his pride be trampled indefinitely. He would stay, only if she was willing to cross the barriers and stop hesitating about their love. He knew that only if Luna took the initiative to change would this relationship have a real chance to survive. As Luna finished speaking, she invited Orion inside. Her eyes were filled with sincerity, silently promising that she would no longer allow prejudice to stand between them. The moment Orion stepped through the doorway, the air in the room seemed to tighten. Luna's father furrowed his brows, clearly displeased, yet he still listened. Her mother gently placed a hand on her husband's arm, as if reminding him to stay composed. Orion met their gaze head-on, refusing to avert his eyes. He spoke, saying that he respected Luna's family, but also had his own dignity. He would not give up so easily, but if they continued to oppose him without reason, he would accept walking away for the sake of his own peace. Orion's words thickened the tension in the room. Luna's father clenched his jaw, ready to object, but under his daughter's unwavering gaze, he found himself unable to voice any harsh words. A silent divide was beginning to surface within the family. Her mother, who had once been firm in her opposition, now felt an ache in her chest, especially after witnessing the suffering her daughter had endured. Some other family members, who had initially remained outside, began listening with a softened perspective. They started to realize that perhaps they had unknowingly contributed to the worsening of this situation through their whispered judgments and unspoken prejudices. Amid the turmoil, Luna took a deep breath and declared with conviction that she wanted to break free from outdated beliefs. She admitted to her own mistake, how she had once feared Orion simply because she had believed the words of others without seeking the truth. She openly expressed regret to her family for allowing prejudice to cloud her judgment. She insisted that she could no longer bow her head and avoid the conflict, for the more she ran, the deeper the wounds became. Her words became the key that unlocked the final door. Though her parents were not yet fully convinced, they slowly softened in the face of their daughter's unwavering determination. The fractures within the family still remained, and no one could guarantee immediate reconciliation. But Luna, by shedding the mask of her own fear, had set the foundation for a more hopeful future. She no longer trembled in Orion's presence, nor did she build an invisible wall between them. Love was now illuminated by understanding and courage, rather than by vague anxieties. With her declaration, Orion made his decision. He would stay. He believed that Luna had shattered the fragments of her past, ready to begin a new chapter, one where prejudice no longer held dominion. As the door slowly closes, the moonlight outside gently spreads its soft glow over the old walls. The Moonlight Mask is not just a symbol that once concealed Orion's secrets, but also a metaphor for the distortion of truth caused by prejudice. Anyone can unknowingly wear that mask when stubbornly believing in rumors or accepting misconceptions without daring to verify them. In this story, it was Luna who endured days of torment because of a mask formed from past fears. Only when she made the decision to remove it did truth and love finally have the chance to step out of the shadows. The story, The Moonlight Mask, Love Buried by the Obsession of Discrimination, shows that love requires great effort. Beyond listening to the heart, one must also have the courage to confront prejudice, to break through the boundaries of fear that have been ingrained for so many years. If Luna had not dared to face her memories, had not stood up to challenge the deeply rooted misconceptions in her family, their relationship would have been beyond saving. As for Orion, he was persistent, yet incredibly rational, understanding that only when Luna was ready to embrace their love would it truly be sustainable. Sometimes, discrimination acts like a barrier, preventing us from seeing the warmth in others. For Luna, discrimination once made her panic, doubt, and instinctively assume that those on the other side of the boundary were a threat. But reality proves that misunderstandings and obsessions are the real obstacles. Once people remove the mask of prejudice, they will be surprised by the hidden beauty in hearts that once seemed distant. Sometimes, a single act of courage is enough to change a life. Therefore, this story is not just about the journey of two individuals, but also serves as a reminder to all viewers about the value of respect and understanding. When faced with differences, rather than feeling anxious or rejecting them, we should learn to empathize and find common ground. The cracks within Luna's family may not have completely disappeared, but she and Orion have laid the foundation for a new future, one that welcomes diverse perspectives. This is also a moment for everyone to reflect. Sometimes, we may unknowingly be wearing a mask ourselves. To those who have followed along, this is a heartfelt thank you for witnessing the full journey of the Moonlight Mask, love buried by the obsession of discrimination. If you or someone you know is struggling with deep-seated fears or prejudice, share this story so that together we can find ways to break down these invisible barriers. Let people know that love, or any deep connection, requires courage to escape the shadows of discrimination. If you found the Moonlight Mask, love buried by the obsession of discrimination, enlightening, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts. Any experiences you've had in overcoming social barriers, invisible fears, or traditional burdens, leave a comment so that we can all learn and heal together. And finally, remember, stay tuned for more stories of love and the struggle for happiness to uncover even more hidden facets of life.